So we're going to go ahead and get started. And let's look at 2.1. We're going to begin with question number 9. So on question number 9 in 2.1, we've got an equation, which is 4x plus 6y equals our 24. And they want you to graph this equation by completing the ordered pairs. So this is what we want to do. We want to go ahead and complete those ordered pairs. Just getting ready to get started. So, haven't missed anything yet. We're just getting ready to get started. Yeah, hopefully we get some more students here in a moment, but otherwise, okay, a few more. All right, so we want to go ahead now and graph this line equation. We need to begin by completing our ordered pairs. So we're going to plug in, remember this is x and y, we're going to plug in x equals 0. And that makes that 0. So then we've got 6y equals 24. And we'll divide by our 6. And so our first piece comes out to be 4. So there's the 4 there. Okay, the next one we're going to plug in y equals 0. And that's, for plug in y equals 0, that piece is gone. So 4x equals 24. Divide by our 4. And now we've got x equals 6. So that goes here. And for the last one, what are we going to plug in? We're going to plug in 2. And that's 4 times 2 plus 6y equals 24. So that's 8 plus 6y equals 24. We'll move the 8 over. Okay, so 24 minus 8. 24 minus 8 should leave you with a 16. Okay. And this is going to leave us with a fraction. So when I divide through by that 6, we want to reduce it down if we can. And that's going to reduce down. And that's going to give you then y equals 6, or sorry, not 6, 8 thirds, right? And I'm sure you ask about this one because you probably need to know how to graph this fraction. Okay, so all the others are whole answers, whole parts. We have a fraction. Now, if I want to graph this line, and this is out of 2.1, by the way, and 2.1, yep, this is actually question number 9. So question 9 out of 2.1. Someone asked about this one. So we went ahead and completed our ordered pairs. Now we're going to graph it. So we've got 0, 4. So 0, 4 would be at 0 and up 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we've got 6, 0, so that's over 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is right here. And where's our last point at? Okay, 8 thirds. What's 8 thirds? Well, 8 thirds as a decimal is 2.6 repeating, so it's at about 3. So approximately 3. So we're going to look at that point that's over 2. And up about 3. So it looks like it's right about there. 2, 8 thirds. So it's at about 3. Okay, 8 thirds is 2.6 repeating, so that's about 3. We're going to say it's about 3. Now we should be able to connect these together. So we're going to go ahead and connect our line together here. If they don't make a line, you made a mistake. They should always make a straight line like this. And there's your answer. So we graphed it, and we finished our ordered pairs. We also had some questions out of 2, 3. So the ones we looked at out of 2, 3 were going to be 5 and 10. Do we have any more to add out of 2, 3? Okay, 5 and 10. Yep, 5 is the graph, which is the increasing and decreasing graph. And 10 is just finding the domain and the range. If not, then we'll look at question 5. And for question 5, what we're going to try and find here is we're going to try and find where this function is increasing, decreasing, and if it stays constant at all. So here's our picture. Okay. Now, when we talk about increasing and decreasing, we are going to be labeling off of the x-axis, not the y-axis. So I'm not going to be using that 0. I'm going to be labeling that off of that -1. And we look at it from left to right. So what's happening here is it's decreasing, and then this part is increasing. Okay? If you look at it from left to right, it's going down, and it's coming up. So when I go to label it, let's start with our decreasing part. Okay, we label off of the x-axis. So here's negative infinity. Here's positive infinity. So it's going down. And where does it start at? It starts decreasing at negative infinity, right? And where does it stop? Decreasing at -1. That's your decrease part. What about the increase part? Yep. The increase part is -1. And it's going to the right, so it goes from -1 to what? Positive infinity. Is there a constant part at all? Yep, none. Is everyone okay with how I got that? Now, where do students make a mistake? They label on the y-axis. We have to make sure we label on the x-axis. The x part of this ordered pair is at -1. So it's decreasing here. It turns here at that -1, and it goes over to positive infinity. The last one out of this section to look at is, yep, this should be your answer here. Yep, the decrease and the increase part. Yep, that's your answer right there, is the decrease part and the increase part. Because that's all you need to do is label where it increases, where it decreases, and where it stays constant. Question 10. Now, question 10, what we're going to be looking at is a graph, and we're going to be determining the domain and the range. So there's our graph, and this is question number 10. And we want to find our domain and our range. And first off, it says it's a relation. Why does it say it's a relation and not a function? Why is this not a function? Yeah, it fails the vertical line test, doesn't it? So this is not a function. That's why they use that word relation. Now, domain, let's do it first. The domain is the x part. And I can start back at negative infinity, and I can follow the graph all the way to the right. Okay, up to the right. So my domain would be negative to positive infinity, because it starts back at the left, curves around, and goes to the right. So my domain is negative to positive infinity. What about the range? Well, where do I start at? Way down here, I start at negative infinity. I watch the graph, and as it goes to the right, what else is it doing? It's going up, so your range would also be negative to positive infinity, wouldn't it? So your domain and your range are both negative to positive infinity. Is everyone okay with that one? .4, we've got 1 and 9, and we can add some more to the list if we need to. Did we have any more to add besides 1 and 9 out of 2.4? Oh, which one? Sure. Yep. We can look at 2.3. We'll also look at question 9 here. Any others out of 2.4 while we're here? 2.4, questions 1 and 9. Okay, well, let's go ahead now and go back and do 2.3. So we're going to do 2.3, question number 9. Same concept. Different picture. Well, actually, this one we got to follow the directions. So what are the directions on 2.3? Yep. And if we read here, it says, these continue to the next page. It says, decide whether the relation defines a function, right? So all we need to do is figure out if it's a function or not. And that continues on to question 9. So is question 9, is this a function or not? Yes or no? No. Why not? Yep, if it fails the vertical line test, doesn't it? Right, touches it 2 places. So that means, since it fails the vertical line test, that this is not a function. It's not a function because it fails that vertical line test.
Could you do 3?
Which one?
2.3.
Question 3? Yep.
That would be it.
Yeah, that's all we want there. A lot of these, there's not much to do in this section at all. It's just yes or no on a lot of these. Students struggle because they make it more complicated than what it is. Okay, question number 3. Make sure we read the directions. It says an equation that defines y as a function of x is given. Rewrite using the function notation f of x. So all we need to do, and this again is 2.3, looking at question 3, all we need to do is solve this for y. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and solve this for y. So let's add that 9x squared over. And that leaves me then with y equals 9x squared. I'm going to write it as a minus x and a plus 5. Now, what else do we need to do? Okay, it says rewrite the equation with the function notation f of x. So what do I need to do with that y? I'm going to replace that y with f of x. And that is all that you need to do. Okay, so all I did was I moved that 9x squared over and replaced the y with f of x. That is it. A lot of times in this chapter, students try to overcomplicate it because they think there's a lot more to do. A lot of these questions are yes or no. They're very simple questions. They might have concepts that you have to think about a little bit, but they're very simple. So some of these, there's nothing really to do. 2.4, we're going to look at questions 1 and 9. Did we have any others to add? 2.4, we'll look at 1 and 9. Sure, yep, we can add 5 to the list also. Yep, the other class asked about those same 3 questions. So 2.4, we're going to look at question number 1. Okay, so on question number 1, we've got 3 choices, and we want to find the one that has a negative slope. So let's look at each one of these and find the one that has the negative slope. Okay, let's see which ones it's not. Why is B not a possible correct answer? Right, and so that 5, that would be a positive slope, wouldn't it? We want a negative. Why is C not the answer choice? Yeah, because if it's y equals a negative 7, that has a 0 slope. What about x equals negative 1? Okay, x lines have an undefined slope. So which one does it have to be? This one. And why is that? Because I can solve it for y, because now we have 9y equals a minus 5x minus 7, which that gives you y equals, when you solve it, a minus 5/9 x minus 7/9. And so your slope would be what? Negative 5/9. So the only one that works is going to be what? Answer A. So you could have either solved A out at the very beginning, or you could have just used process of elimination. A positive slope, 0 slope, doesn't work. Undefined slope. The only one that could work is A. A gives you that negative slope. Are we okay with that? Okay, so the answer for that one should be A. Also, we're going to look at 9 as well. Okay, so we'll look at question 9. I think there might have been another one. Yep, sorry about that. Yep, 1, 9, and 5. So we're going to go to 5 next. And question 5, you have a picture. And we want to find the average rate of change. Now, when I talk about an average rate of change, that is going to be the same as your slope. Why is my slope going to be negative? Right? And it's going down, and that makes sense because what happens to the value of your car? It decreases, doesn't it? Right? The more you drive the car and have the car, the more it decreases in value. So that's why this is going to have a negative slope. Let's go ahead and find our ordered pairs. So we've got 2 points here. We're going to find ordered pairs. So if I look at this as an ordered pair, well, this is going to be at 0, 20. So there's 1 point. And let's try to find the other one. The other one is at 5, and it looks like it's at about 15, isn't it? What do we have? 2 points. What can we do? Find our slope. So we've got the point 0, 20, and 5, 15. So x1, y1, x2, y2, and write up your formula for the slope. Y's always go on the top. X's always go down below. And we'll quickly fill this in. And that's going to be 20 minus 15 over 0 minus 5. And 20 minus 15, that's a 5. And 0 minus 5, that's a minus 5. And that then comes out to give you what? Minus 1, doesn't it? Okay. And what is our answer going to be? It's not just minus 1. That came out to be minus $1,000 per year. Because why is it $1,000 per year? Because what's the value of the car in? Okay, value of the car in thousands of dollars. So we got our value to be -1. Okay, and that actually means that it's decreasing then what? $1,000 every year. And it's negative because the value of our car is decreasing. Okay. Question number 9. Question number 9, we're going to be looking at break even. And what does it mean if I say break even? Okay, if I say break even, that means the revenue equals the cost. Okay, that's what it means. When I say break even, that means the revenue equals the cost. Now, what is revenue? Okay, revenue is how much I get from selling an item. So if I go to the store and I buy $100 worth of groceries, the revenue would be $100. Okay? Revenue is how much you get from selling items. Cost. The cost is how much it costs to produce that item. So I might have a revenue of $100, all right, from the groceries, but the company might have, let's say, $20 in cost for the groceries because they have to pay for overhead, things like that. So the cost might be $20. Subtract them and you get your profit. When I say break even means your revenue equals your cost. So those are words you may not be familiar with, but revenue is how much you charge for an item. Cost is how much it costs to make that item. And break even means profit is 0 and your revenue equals your cost. Okay? Break even means your profit's 0. And the easiest way to remember that is break even, revenue equals the cost. Now let's try to come up with our equations to solve here. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit before we delve into the question. And this one leads into what we're looking at today. So Northwest molds plastic handles, which cost 50 cents per handle to make. The fixed cost to run the molding machine is $4,664 per week. If the company sells handles for $4.50 each, how many handles must be molded and sold weekly to break even? Let's talk about the revenue first. How much do I charge for those handles? That's the cost of them to make them, right? If I go to buy this handle at the store, how much do I have to pay for that handle? $4.50. Okay, so 4.5. Okay, and how many handles am I going to buy? We don't know, so we're going to use an X. All right, so X represents how many handles I buy. Maybe I buy one, maybe I buy a dozen. X is going to represent the number of handles. So your revenue would mean how many handles I buy times the number. So if I bought 2 handles, your revenue would be $9. Okay? Price of that item times the number. Now, what about the cost? How much does it cost to make every handle? We have a variable cost, and so each handle costs 50 cents. So that's 0.5x there. Now, we also have what are called fixed costs. And fixed costs are things that never change. So fixed costs is things like rent on the building, payments on the machine for the company, might be salaries for people. It's always the same. And so what's our fixed cost in this case? Yep, $46.64. And you can finish it from here. So how do I want you to finish it? Solve it for X. And that's going to tell you how many handles I need to sell every week to break even. we're going to go ahead now and start the next section. So we'll pass out our new homework packet here. Okay, does everybody have their homework packet? I also have page notes for the help. This is really going to help with 2.5. You're sure welcome. So everyone has the new homework packet, right? Everyone's got the new homework packet? Okay. What we're going to be doing now today is 2.5. So 2.5 is equations of lines. And you should have already seen line equations before. You've probably done this in elementary, intermediate, and any other algebra course that you've had. So we're going to be talking about equations of lines. And so the first thing we need to look at is how to write our answer. And this is 2.5. There's two ways that you can write a line. Does everybody have one now? You got okay. So 2.5, we're going to talk about line equations. And there's two ways that we can write our line equations. You can write them in what's called slope-intercept. And slope-intercept is y equals mx plus b. Or you can write them in standard form. And standard form is ax plus by equals c. And with standard form, we have to be careful because a, b, and c are integers. So no fractions or decimals. And also, A must be positive. So you can either write your answer in slope-intercept form, which is what we normally do, or you can write your answer in what's called standard form. And what's important about standard form is that your A, B, and your C, they are going to be integers, so no fractions and no decimals, and A must be positive. So we're going to do a couple of these, and then we'll start building our line equations. So let's convert these to standard form. So let's say I give you this. Okay, I want you to write this in standard form. Right now it's not in any form. I just gave it to you. And I want you to write this in what's called standard form. Now in standard form, we cannot have fractions or decimals. So to get this in standard form, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out my fractions. So I'm going to multiply all of it by 3. And that gives me then 15x equals 9y, the 3's cancel, plus 1. it needs to look like this. All right, so it needs to look like this. AX plus BY equals C. So I need to move things around. So let's move that 6Y over. So that's minus 6Y plus 15x equals 1. And we need to clear out our negative, because why can we not have a negative? Because our definition up here says A must be what? Remember, in standard form, A must be positive. So, let me rewrite it in the correct order. Sorry about that. Let me rewrite this in the right order. My mistake. Okay, let's rewrite this in the correct order. So I moved it over. Make sure it's in the correct order. That was my mistake. I just accidentally wrote it wrong here. Okay, so always when you rewrite it, what does it need to look like? Make sure it's in the correct order. Okay, this one is not in the correct order yet. Why not? Because the y is first. What does it need to look like? AX, right, plus BY equals what? C. So rewrite it so the x is first. Are we done? Yes. How do I know? Well, the x is on the left. It starts with an x. Y is on the left as well. Is the x positive? Yes. If it was negative, we would have to change it, but it's not. It's positive. No fractions, no decimals. So there's your answer in standard form. Do what? Yep. That part can be negative. Okay, not a problem at all. It just has to start positive with the x. So you have to make sure that that 15, in this case, is positive. Let's do another one. Yeah, in this case, this would be your answer in standard form, right? And so your A is your 15, your B is the negative 6, okay? And the C is the 1. And this is it in standard form. So 15x minus the 6y equals 1, okay? Let's do another one, and let's convert this one to standard form as well. How about y equals 9x plus 3. And this one's very simple. I just want to make sure we understand the concepts here. So I want this in standard form. Okay, so what does standard form look like? It looks like this, doesn't it, in a way? So to get this in standard form, I'm going to begin by moving that 9x over. But this is not in standard form. Why is this not in standard form? Okay, because of the negative 9. So how do we change that? We put a negative in front, right, and we distribute it through. Now when I rewrite this, that's going to change my signs, and that's going to make it 9x minus y equals now a negative 3. And is this in standard form? Yes, no fractions, no decimals. The x and the y are on the left-hand side. It starts with the x, and the x is positive. Now we're going to move on, and we're going to start building equations. A lot of times, students struggle with this section. And this is the absolute easiest way to work through this section. There are 3 different flowcharts, and we're going to be using them. So the first one, on that sheet that I gave you, the first one says, and this is what we're going to be doing first, find the equation of a line. You're given a point and a slope. Okay, so we follow the directions. So think of it like a recipe. So what does it say to do? Apply your point-slope formula, and then you either write your answer in either standard form or slope-intercept form. Okay, so you just follow the arrows down and go one way or the other. So let's do one of these. And this one I'm going to have you find the equation in, how about standard form? We'll do the next one in slope-intercept. Now, in this case, you're going to be given a point and a slope. Okay, and that's a minus 3/5 there. Okay, so I want to get this in standard form. Now, what are you given? All right, let's make sure we understand what to do. You are given a point and a slope. So we use this first flowchart. You're given a point and a slope. And so we follow it down. What's the first thing that we have to do? Okay, first thing we encounter is the point-slope formula. So now we're going to use the point-slope, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus your x1. And this is your x1, and this is your y1. So that's what we've got. Now, what are we going to do? We're going to plug our values in. And so when I plug in my values, watch out for double negatives. So that's y minus a minus 8 equals now minus 3/5 times x minus 5, right? Is everyone all right with that so far? Double negative, what does that mean? A double negative here, that means that makes it now a positive, and we're going to distribute that negative 3/5 through. So double negative makes it a positive 8. I'm going to write this as a minus 5/1 here, and you can reduce them down, but it doesn't matter because we're going to clear out the fractions in a moment. So we can distribute that through, and that's going to be minus 3/5 x. Double negative makes it positive, and 3 times 5 makes it a 15, and that's over 5. And you could reduce that down to a 3, but it doesn't matter because we're going to get rid of our fractions anyways. Right? It's 3, or you can leave it as 15 over 5. How do I clear out my fractions? Yep, multiply it all by 5. But that can reduce down to 3, and that's okay. Or you can just leave it as it's a 15 over 5. So go ahead now and distribute through and clear your fractions. Why are we clearing our fractions? Because we want this in what? Standard form. And can we have fractions in standard form? No. So let's get rid of those. So distributing through, that gives you 5y plus 40, it looks like, a minus 3x on the right-hand side. Those cancel. And that leaves you then with a 15. Move that 3x over. Subtract off the 40. And what do we now have? Let's take our time here. Rewrite it. We have a 3x plus 5y. We brought that 40 over. And 15 minus that 40, well, that makes it a negative 25. Is this in standard form now? Yes. Why is it in standard form? Yep. No fractions, no decimals, and your x is positive. Let's do another one. This one's going to have 2 points. So let's, on this one, find the equation in slope-intercept form. And you're going to be given this. You're going to be given 2 points. How about 3, 9, and 4, 7? Okay, now which flowchart are we going to use? We're not going to use the first one. Why not? Because this one says, find the equation of a line given a point and a slope. Do I have a slope yet? No. What's the second page say? What's the second one say? Find the equation of a line when you're given what? 2 points. Is that what I have here? Yep, that's what I've got, isn't it? Right? I've got my 2 points. Find the equation of a line given 2 points. Second page. What do we need to now do? Follow our arrows now. First thing we do is what? Find the slope. So let's do that. We've got 2 points. So the first thing we do is we find the slope. And your formula is m equals y1 minus y2 over x1 minus your x2. There's x1, y1, x2, y2. So fill in the parts here. So when I fill them in, that's going to be 9 minus 7 over 3 minus 4. 9 minus 7, that's a 2. And 3 minus 4, that's a minus 1. So that makes my slope now come out to be what? Negative 2. What's the next step? Okay, we're here. We just found our slope. What do we do after we find the slope? Yep, point slope. Okay, so let's do that next. Okay, we're going to use the point slope formula. And I'm going to use that first point, 3, 9. And I'm going to use the slope that I found, which was a negative 2. So I'm going to use those two. And I'm going to use it in my point slope formula, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus your x1. And there's x1 and y1. I'll slow down a bit so we can get caught up. So let's see what we did. All right? So unlike the last one, this one, we do not have the slope. So we've got to find the slope. Right? We use that flow chart. This one is the flow chart that we want. It says find the equation of a line. You're given 2 points. Find the slope first. Then what? Then use point. Yep. Point slope. Right? And then what do we want? Slope-intercept form, so eventually it's going to look like that. So let's go ahead and finish it out. And that's going to be y minus 9 equals a minus 2 times x minus 3. Distribute it through. And that is now y minus 9 equals a minus 2x, double negative makes it a positive 6. Move that 9 over. And now we've got it. So what's our final answer going to now be? Slope-intercept form. Yep, y equals, yep, a minus 2x. And then it looks like plus 15, isn't it? So there's your answer. And that is in slope-intercept form. Okay? Is everyone all right with that? And you probably have done these before. You should have done this in other courses. Might be done a different way. But that's how you do it. I think the flow charts is the easiest way to do it. It's following directions. Let's do another one. I'm going to work out one of the questions from your homework. You can do the other. There's 2 applications. I'm going to do question, I'll do question 10. You can do 9. Because 10's the harder one. Okay, you can do 9. And I made it multiple choice just so you could make sure you were on the right track. If you work these out and your answers do not match up, you made a mistake. I do make some of them multiple choice just so you don't make a mistake on. Some of the ones I know students are more likely to get confused on. The others I don't. So question 10, I made this one multiple choice just so you could tell if you're even on the right track or not. So question 10. A driver wants to gauge the fuel efficiency of her vehicle at speeds 30 miles an hour and above. So she notices that traveling at a rate of speed of 45 miles an hour, she gets 39 miles per gallon. Whereas at an average rate of speed of 50 miles per hour, she gets 29 miles per gallon. Find a linear equation to model the gas mileage Y for an average rate of speed X miles per hour. So we need to come up with our 2 ordered pairs. So let's make sure we know which is which. We've got X and Y. Now, X is speed. Okay, miles per hour, speed. The Y is the gas mileage. Okay, so X is going to be the speed, Y is the gas mileage. Now, we need to come up with 2 ordered pairs. So it tells us how they need to look. X is the speed, Y is the mileage. 2 ordered pairs here. So what's our first ordered pair going to be? Well, the first time she records her data, she travels at 45 miles an hour. And while at 45 miles an hour, she gets 39 miles per gallon. Our next ordered pair is 50 miles an hour, and her gas mileage drops to 29 miles per gallon. Now, what should our slope be? Positive or negative, do you think? Negative. Why is it going to be negative? Right. Yep. Makes sense, doesn't it? Make sure it makes sense to you. As you increase the speed, what happens to the mileage? Down. Right? So our slope should be negative. What do we have here? 2 points. So, second page. Find the equation of a line when you're given 2 points. What do we do? Find the slope. Step number 1. So we're going to find our slope M, which is y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. x1, y1, x2, y2. So that is now 39 minus 29 over 45 minus 50. So that comes out to then be 39 minus 29, that's 10. And 45 minus 50, so negative 5. When we divide them out, we get our slope now to be what? Negative 2. We're not done yet though, are we? Right? Sometimes I see students stop here. This is not finishing the question. All we did was we found the slope. Now, what do we do after we found the slope? Point slope. Okay. So now we use point slope. And we've got our slope, which is a -2. And we have our point. We'll just use that first one. We're going to use that 45, comma, -39. And we're going to use our formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus your x1. Should be able to plug our values in. So let's go ahead and do that. Remember, this is x1, y1. So that's y minus 39 equals -2 times x minus 45. Be very, very careful, because a lot of times students make a mistake with that negative. So make sure you distribute that -2 through. Now, I know it seems something you wouldn't do, but it happens. So make sure you're very careful with the algebra. And so that's going to be a -2x. Negative and negative makes it a positive 90. A lot of times, though, students make mistakes with the small things, like adding or subtracting, or forgetting to distribute that negative through. So those are some commonly made mistakes. So we need to make sure we don't make those. Now, what do we want to do? We want this in slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form means we solve it for y. So add that 39 over. And now we've got it in slope-intercept form. So now we have y equals a -2x plus 129. And that should be one of the answers. And it is. Question 9 is almost the same. Question 9, instead of miles per hour and gallons of gas used, miles per gallon, question 9 is snakes on area of land. So snakes and acres. But it's done the same way. You set up your variables, you get your ordered pairs, you find your slope, get it in slope-intercept form. Now we're going to talk about the next ones. And the next ones are a little bit more complicated. The next questions, we're going to have to be talking about parallel and perpendicular. So let's take a moment now to look at our flow chart, the last page. The last page we use when we have a point and a line equation. So if you got a point and a line equation, the first thing you do is you want to take that equation and you want to solve it for y, and you want to find your slope. Now the question is either going to have you find the perpendicular part or the parallel part, one or the other. If it's parallel, we keep it the same. Nothing changes. If it's perpendicular, we use the negative or opposite reciprocal. So we change the sign and we flip it over. And then we use our point-slope formula from there. And then we write our answer in either standard form or slope-intercept form. So let's do 2 of these, and then we'll look at some special cases, and then that'll be it. So let's do 2 of these, and let's, on this one, find the equation. In standard form. And let's say you're given this. You're given the point 5, -4, and let's say perpendicular to 3x plus, how about 4y equals 9. So this is what we've got. Now, the key word here is going to be perpendicular. We're going to follow the flow chart. Last page. So, find the equation of a line when you're given a point and a line equation. So that's what we have. What does it say to do? It says you take your equation and you solve it for y, and you find your slope. So let's do that. So the first step is going to be solve for y. So move that 3x over. So 4y equals now minus 3x plus 9. Divide by your 4. And we have now y equals minus 3/4 x plus 9/4. And what would my slope be? Minus 3/4. Is that the slope we're going to be using though? No. Okay? Why not? If this had been parallel, we would use that slope. Okay? If it was parallel, if this said parallel, we would keep this slope. But we want the perpendicular part. So that means we're going to have to use the negative reciprocal. So we're going to use the negative reciprocal, so we're going to have to use positive 4/3. That's what we're going to be using. Why are we going to be using positive 4/3? We're going to be using positive 4/3 because we took the minus 3/4, flipped it over, so that gave us our 4/3. It was negative, so we need to make that then what? Positive. Flip it over, change your sign. So that's what we're going to be using. Now, once we have done that, what's the next step in our flow chart? We're almost done. We're here. We went over here, right? Now we use point slope. And let's make sure we know what we're working with. I always like to rewrite things so we don't lose it. We're going to be using the point slope formula. And we've got that 0.5, negative 4. And we're going to be using that slope 4/3. That's what we're going to be using, right? That's the one that we use, positive 4/3. What's our point slope? Y minus y1 equals now m times x minus your x1. And there's x1, and there's y1. So that's our formula, and that's the slope we're going to be using. And we fill it in. And that is now y. Watch out for double negatives. So y minus 4. And that equals 4/3 times x minus 5, right? Okay, so watch out for double negatives. Double negatives are going to make that positive. And we're going to distribute that 4/3 through. So that gives you then y plus 4 equals, distributing through, we have 4/3 x, and 4 times negative 5, that makes it a minus 20 over 3. Is everyone okay with what I did there? What form are we going into? We want it in what again? Standard form, okay? And what standard form look like? Right there. So, can we have fractions in standard form? Nope, so they have to go. So, multiply it all by 3 to get rid of those. And now we've got 3y plus 12 equals 4x minus 20. And again, we want this in standard form. So I'm going to move the 12 over, and I'm going to move that 4x over also. And now we've got a minus 4x plus 3y equals, putting those together, minus 32. Is that in standard form? Yes or no? Nope, why not? Yep, so it starts off with a negative, so we need to fix that. So we distribute the negative through. And that changes your signs. And that makes it now positive 4x, a minus 3y equals positive 32. And there's your answer in standard form. Uh-huh.
I understand why we need to change the negative slope.
Okay, why we have to change the slope?
Yeah.
Okay, because, right. Okay, when we talk about slope, now what does parallel mean? Let's take a moment to talk about parallel. Okay, parallel lines are like this. They never cross. These have the same slope, right? These have the same slope. These have the same slope. They never cross. Perpendicular lines look like this. They cross. They form an X. Now, when we talk about perpendicular lines, they have what's called a negative reciprocal slope. So, negative or opposite reciprocal. That means that we take our fraction. Actually, go back up here. We take our fraction, which was negative 3/4. Okay? And we flip over that 3/4. When we flip it over, what does it become? 4/3. And we also change that sign. Now, it was negative, so we flip it over and make that negative a positive. So flip it over, change your sign. Okay, does that make sense now? Okay, good. You're welcome. And we're going to do another one. Let's do another one. This one's going to be parallel. And let's find the equation in slope-intercept form. So we're going to find the equation in slope-intercept form. And let's see, you're given the point 5, 2. And I want that to be parallel to 3x plus y equals 9. Okay, so the first thing we do is we look at this and we say, what do we have? All right, we have a point and we have a slope. Or not slope, a point and a line equation, right? Point and a line equation, where do we begin? We begin with the third page. Okay, find the equation of a line when you're given a point and a line equation. So what's my first step? Take that equation, solve it for y, right? Okay, so let's take that equation and solve it for y. So I'm going to move that 3x over. And that leaves me then with y equals a minus 3x plus 9. And what's my slope? Negative 3. Am I going to change my slope at all? No. It's parallel, so that means we use this slope. Parallel lines use the same slope. So we're not going to change this at all. All right, we keep the same slope. Once we have done that, following our flow chart, All right, we went down the parallel side. What's next? We were here, followed it along. Where do we go? Point slope. Okay, so we're going to use our point slope formula. And what do we have? We have that point. So we're going to use that point 5, 2. And we have our slope, which in this case was a -3. And x1, y1. I always like to rewrite our formula, which is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Everything has been labeled. We're now going to go ahead and plug in our values. So that's y minus 2 equals -3 times x minus 5. Make sure you're careful with that negative there. With that 3, distribute it through. And we now have y minus 2 equals a minus 3x. Negative and negative makes it positive 15. What does it need to look like? That, doesn't it? Right? We want it slope intercept, so that's what it needs to look like. So to get it in the correct form, what do we need to do? Simply add 2, and that's it. So now we've got it in slope intercept form, and that's y equals a minus 3x plus 17, and that's it. We've got one more quick topic to go over. This is not going to take long at all. This is very, very easy for the next ones. I'm going to go ahead and pass out the sign-in sheet before I forget. So, let me get this in the correct order here. I think it must have got mixed up in the order here. Yep, okay. That's the one. So here's the sign-in sheet. Now let's talk about vertical and horizontal lines real quick. Vertical lines have a slope that is undefined, and they're x-lines. So we'll talk about vertical lines first. Vertical lines are x equals some number, and the slope is undefined. M equals undefined. Remember, vertical lines are going to be up and down lines, and they only have an x part. So x equals some number, and that slope is going to be undefined. Okay, vertical lines are up and down, undefined slope. Horizontal lines are, and it'll make sense once we do these in a moment, are y equals some number, and the slope is 0. M equals 0. So now I'm going to give you a point and a slope. And you're going to have to tell me what it is. And we're just going to find the equation because these are all in standard form. So I'm just going to say find the equation. They have to be in standard form. And let's say you're given the 0.813, and m equals 0. Okay, so I want you to find the equation when you're given the point 8, 13, and your slope is 0. Okay, so if your slope is 0, what kind of line is it? Horizontal. Okay, and what variable does it have in it? Y. What's the y component of your ordered pair? Yep, 13. So what would your answer in this one be? Y equals now 13. That is it. Because that line goes through that point, and your slope was 0. So if your slope is 0, it is a y-only line. Yep, that's it. That's your answer. It's kind of like what we did when we looked at the absolute values. And remember, some of those were true false, right? They were very easy, similar to this. A lot of times on these, you don't have to do any work. So let's do another one. So let's find the equation. Again, these are going to be in standard form. And let's say you're given this point. How about minus 4, 9. And let's say our m is undefined. So our m is going to be undefined. Slope is undefined. If it's an undefined slope, what kind of line is it? Okay, if we can't remember, we'll go back up and look. Undefined slope, vertical line, and what type is it? X. So what would it look like now in your answer? Okay, your answer would be an X line, and what's the X component of your ordered pair? Negative 4. So what's your answer going to be? Negative 4. Because I can't use the point slope formula because my slope is undefined. I can't even do it. If your slope is 0, you could use the point slope formula. But why do all that work when, if you remember, if your slope is 0, it's a y line. If your slope is undefined, it's an x line. We've got to do 2 more quick questions, and that'll be it for today. So let's again find the equation. And you're going to be given a point. How about minus 10, positive 13? And I want it to be parallel to x equals 15. Okay. Now, when I talk about parallel, what do parallel lines look like? If I have an x line is parallel. Here's your x line, it's a vertical line. I want to be parallel. What's parallel to this vertical line? Another what? Vertical line, right? That's another x line. So if it's parallel, it means it's the same. So this one would then come out to simply be x equals what? X equals that, negative 10. That's it. So that's just going to come out to be x equals negative 10. That's your x component. Parallel means the same. What about perpendicular? Let's say you're given a new ordered pair. How about 15, negative 2? And we want that to be perpendicular to. How about x equals 9? What's perpendicular to an x line? An x line is a vertical line like this. So what's going to be perpendicular to it? What's going to cut it? Yep, a horizontal line. Okay, what lines are those? Y. So what would this be? This would be y equals now what? Oh, yep. I just about wrote it down wrong. Y equals negative 2, isn't it? Yep, because that's your x part. Or sorry, that's your y part. And that's going to be your answer, y equals -2.
Parallel would be X.
Yeah, if it would have been parallel, it would be x equals 15. Okay? Perpendicular just means you change the variable, basically. You switch them around. So x is parallel to x, y is parallel to y, and x and y are perpendicular to each other. So what's your homework? Well, your homework now is 2.5. You should be able to do them all. So that's going to be your homework. If you've got your homework done, I'll pick it up. If you want to turn it in on Thursday, you can turn it in on Thursday. I don't take off points for late work, so if you ever fall behind a little bit, that's not a problem. You can always turn it in late. You just do not want to fall too far behind.